Here it is. I mentioned it's September 18th, and the coaching carousel is already spinning, which is fine with me. I don't have an issue with that. It's kind of the price of business for a lot of these coaches. I mean, if you look up how much they're making, I think we're all right with it. Like I looked this morning because, and we're going to talk about the UCLA job. I think Jed Fisch is making $8 million a year. Like that's just that. There it is. Jed Fisch, right? Did a good job at Arizona. Now the head coach of Washington, and a Washington team that was coming off playing for the national championship. He earns that job, didn't inherit it, but that's a lot of money. And I say that to say that's why we get to talk about these guys like they're commodities, because it's fun and because I don't feel bad. That's my justification. I'm good at that. Trust me. Try my personal life. Okay, so. And by the way, that's the noise, right? You got to block that out and do the right thing. But I'm telling you that the rationalization is always there. It's always at play, right? Me and my buddies in AA, we call that the dark passenger. You got to shut that dark passenger down. And I'm shutting the dark passenger in the media world down right here, right now, as I was having some peanuts before the show. Hold on. Oh, yeah, real quick. Slovacek's. Thank you very much. Right? Slovacek's, by the way, that's a place you got to go to. Over the weekend, if you're coming into town for the Baylor game, maybe you're traveling north, going to Dallas, maybe you're traveling south, going to Austin. If you're on I-35 and you cross through west and you don't get off there and stop at Slovacek's, that's your problem, okay? Also, Socorro Family Ford. If you're looking for a car, I don't know where else you'd go. Look, there are car dealerships banging down the door over here at Rogue Media trying to be a part of this show. No. Just Socorro Family Ford. That's who we're with, and that's who we ride with because they rode with us since the very beginning. Just like Daniel Stark and just like Crawford Austin Properties and First National Bank of Central Texas. All right, let's get to it now. Dave Aranda has a huge game this weekend. And he is not at all focused on what I'm about to talk about, but I'm focused on it because I think it's complete rubbish. Now, there are people, right? Guys in the football industry, whether it's pro or college, insiders, information guys who just don't miss. Okay, I consider Pete Thamel one of those guys. I consider Peter Schrager one of those guys on the NFL level. Adam Schefter, of course, right? List goes on. But sometimes those guys get into big picture stuff. And it's to no fault of their own, right? Like a Brett McMurphy or a Pete Thamel will say, maybe a throwaway comment. Hey, yeah, that guy might make sense for that job. Look no further than Brett McMurphy. Yeah, Dave Aranda and his wife, their first date was at a UCLA football game. And, Dave is from Southern California. And that's where it ends, right? Like, okay. And maybe there was more to the comment, but when I'm reading articles now or when I'm watching certain shows or podcasts, that's what I'm hearing, right? Like Brett McMurphy mentioned this. So now this, right? Like Brett McMurphy mentioned that Dave took his wife to a UCLA game for their first date. He mentioned that Dave Aranda is from Southern California. And then you start to get these other outlets who do. And I do it here, dude. We aggregate, we talk, but just this is my time. So I'm going to give my opinion. And anybody else is entitled to give their opinion, but this is where I get to give my opinion. I think, like, when I'm watching a show and they're like, oh, Dave Aranda could go to UCLA, that is the biggest bunch of horse shit, like, you're ever going to hear. And we don't swear on this show, but only when necessary, okay? I want you to think about what is going on right now with UCLA. Okay. Yes, they are a part of the Big Ten. Okay. That is actually more problem than solution right now because the gap between UCLA and the Michigans and the Ohio States is like the Pacific Ocean. Like it's that wide. And it truly is right now. So, and you can close it, right? It can be closed, but there are financial issues there that are somewhat insurmountable right now. And I remember this, and a lot of you guys do too, because it became public around the time of COVID, that UC system in Southern California or in California, they had to bail UCLA out like around 2021 or 2022. They gave them around $70 million because the school was in such a deficit. and its athletic programs particularly. UCLA has never had like the donor psychopaths, for lack of a better term, that other schools around the country have had, right? Like when you think about graduates from UCLA, and we talk about this a little bit, like it's a little snobby, right? Like when it's compared to USC, right? Like UCLA, you think like doctors, engineers, lawyers, like people who are, and thank God for them, changing the world, right? People who actually matter, not football coaches, but they're putting their money back into the academic side, right? They're not like oil guys, right? Who are dying to see, their home team, right? Whether it's Texas Tech or maybe it is TCU or, a huge program or a huge part of their heart, right? TCU is probably not the best example, but you get my point. Texas, how about that? So they're putting money right back in to those athletic programs, maybe some of whom these people didn't even go there. When you think about a lot of the people that end up going to UCLA that graduate and go on to like huge careers, right? The folks I mentioned about changing the world, a lot of them are transplants. Like I was with somebody who was a doctor who went to UCLA from Texas. Like she was just in UCLA for medical school. Like that's my experience, but it's also what I know about that school. More transplant than like people living there, going there. Different from USC, which, by the way, USC has all this Hollywood money, all this media money, and they're quicker to put it back into their shiny toy, which is football. UCLA is just not there right now. And by all accounts, the money that they've gotten from Big Ten TV contracts has been going right back into like plug in the jug, dude. Like, okay, like we gotta patch this hole up here. We're losing money here. Like it's basically helped them stay afloat. I say all this to say, when you think about a guy like Dave Aranda, and my man Matt Moseley was talking to Swingler the other day, and Mose was making a great point. And I by the way, I love Dave Aranda. I always have gone, and it's for me calling games on ESPN, and I've gotten a chance to sit down with him a few times, and I'm just crazy about him. Okay, there's something about him. We talk about core values and core beliefs, and somebody who blocks out the noise and has a single purpose. That is Dave Aranda. And to me, it's pretty attractive, right? And he also does a great job of breaking through to athletes because they understand that he cares about them, right? Like Dave does care about the athletes, and that's how you get him to play, okay? But unfortunately, for college football, in the world of college football, there's so much more that goes into re-energizing a program like UCLA. And there are bells and whistles, and forgive me, but the word sexy becomes involved, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that program needs right now that Dave Aranda does not have and does not want to discover in his own self, right? For instance, and this goes back to Moseley talking to Scotty, Matt Rule, right? Like say what you want about him. Matt Rule was going to stand there in the press conference before and after the game, before being during the week, and then after the game. And he was going to be compelling, dude. He was interesting. He was exciting. He would say stuff, like sound bites, like, and he was a fire and brimstone guy in the locker room with his players. Those are all the things that UCLA needs right now. They need someone that will come in there and energize those boosters who actually maybe exist, but if they do exist, they have gone totally dormant. Because why would they go running to Westwood to drop money off for Deshaun Foster, where there's so many question marks, right? Like UCLA needs someone who can move the needle. Dave Aranda is not that someone, dude. Just because he went to a UCLA game with his wife on his first date. Christy and I went to some goddamn place in Burleson for our first date. I don't even remember the name. Like, do you think we're going to have our wedding reception there? Like, it's not happening. So that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that I think we're going out of our way, and we do this all the time because we're looking for things to put out there that people will find interesting and, think that we know or have an angle. Like the fact that there are a couple circumstances that would make someone think that Dave Aranda is good for that job at UCLA we're not really looking at UCLA. We're not looking at the need for the school. Like, and by the way, part of the reason people are saying, or people, and not a ton of people, but it's out there, and I'm shocked. It's like gaining steam. I think Cam Stewart was talking about this. Surprise, surprise. I'm going on with him later on today on Locked On Baylor, so I'll straighten his ass out too. Trust me, I will. That little runt. He's always messing around. He's always behind the scenes now, stirring it up. That's why they call him Scam Stewart. So I'm looking forward to getting him in a headlock later on. But back to the issue at hand, which really isn't an issue. It's just a rant of mine. But I like, this is really bothering me. Like, I feel like I'm somewhat close to the situation. Being here, having done a bunch of Baylor games, just having proximity to the program, knowing people over there in football and in all other parts of it. And I don't know, man, if Dave Aranda were to go to UCLA, I would be so shocked. But the last point that I touched on, this is something I need to brush up on with my delivery here. I can go all over the place. But when I was talking about the Big Ten, people talk about, are people starting to notice that those top two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, are separating themselves from the rest of the pack? I believe with all of my heart and soul that the Big 12 is right there. Now, when you talk about X's and O's and Jimmys and Joes, the Jimmys and Joes with the SEC and Big Ten are always going to be a cut above, right? But with the transfer portal and with all the changes now and with all of the amazing talent that surfaces every offseason, and now it'll be just that January window, as that spring portal window is going to be closed officially, and that's great news for coaches. We could talk about that another time. But I don't think the Big 12 is that far behind. I think you're much better suited to make the college football playoff and to increase your salary at Baylor by getting to the college football playoff, right? If you're Dave Aranda and competing, you have a better chance of getting to the college football playoff at Baylor than you do at UCLA. And that's going to be for 5 years. So it doesn't make sense for Dave. It certainly doesn't make sense for UCLA. None of this actually made sense for me to talk about this morning.